In my last video about adulting, I talked about the inner child and how it can be triggered, we can end up operating from a child mentality without even noticing, and how that sabotages situations that can be very important to us. If this happens regularly and if we become used to it, we can end up believing some really bad things about ourselves. We might believe that we're incompetent or stupid or emotionally overwhelmed very easily. But what's actually happening is that each time we go to a certain place or enter a certain situation or we're around certain people, we're triggered into our child selves, we lose our adult competencies, and our child is just desperately trying to function in a world that a child can't really handle. So in today's video, I'll be mentioning 5 ways in which the inner child takes control of our adult experience. And at the end of the video, I'll be reminding you about the process that exists to tackle this. As ever, if you find today's video useful, please give it a like, make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and hey, hit the bell button. That lets you know when I publish new videos. I'm releasing these at the moment weekly on Wednesdays, or in the evening in UK time, and if you hit the bell, it'll let you know when I publish a new video. Okay, so in the last video that I made about adulting, I talked a little bit about the inner child, why it exists, how it comes about, and also some ways in which it can be a problem. So your inner child does not have the resources or experience or capacity in order to handle your adult life. She or he just isn't equipped to handle adult challenges and the kind of stuff that you face on a daily basis. It's not fair to put that onto a child. So we try to make sure that our inner child isn't handling situations like that. We try to make them sure that they have a safe and held and loved experience, and we try to move all of our decision making into our adult sphere. We still get a lot of information from our inner child, and we still engage in play and curiosity and things that are really inspired by a child's approach to things, but we try and operate from an adult place. One of the bits of feedback that I got from that video was, could you give us some examples of times when the inner child becomes a problem or steps into the fore? So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to flag up 5 ways in which the inner child tends to take control or surge into the fore, or just things that happen when your inner child is in the driving seat. And then for each of those ways, I'll try and give you a few examples. And I'm really going to try and make this actionable for you. So if you recognize any of the things that I talk about today, then it could be that there are times in your life when your inner child is in the driver's seat, trying to manage a life that is beyond their capacity, and therefore you're getting the fallout and the backlash and all the problems that come with a child trying to live in an adult world. So here we go, 5 ways in which your inner child can show up and take control of your adult life. So the first one is overprioritizing safety. We all need safety in our lives. We all need a comfort zone. We all need to know that we are safe and secure. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the fundamental level which you need to attend to first is your physical well-being and your safety and your security. So it's real, it's genuine, it's something we do need to consider in our lives. But if you over-prioritize it and you find yourself worrying about risks and problems a lot, shying away from doing new things, then it could be that your inner child is far too much in the driver's seat, far too governing your experience as an adult. So examples of this would be a poverty or a scarcity mentality. So that is constantly worrying you're not going to have enough, you're not going to be safe, working out how you can save more money, how you can have more money coming in, how you can have a better experience in your life because you're not getting enough, you're not going to have enough, it's too perilous. This can be your inner child just misjudging the level of risk or the level of abundance in your life. So a scarcity mentality is just when we are focused on the idea that we're not going to have enough, we're not secure enough, we need more, and we're just worried that we don't have, we're not going to be provided for, we're not going to have money, we're not going to have enough means. So if you find yourself thinking like that, that could be your inner child freaking out at the level of challenge that your adult life requires and misjudging the amount of abundance that you do have in your life. So that's an example. Another example might be overinflating the size of a risk. So the idea of going to meet new people or embracing new ideas or doing something which is a little bit challenging, if you have a habit of exploding that and making it into a massive source of fear and anxiety in your life, again, that could be your inner child trying to manage your adult experience and just being overwhelmed by the possibility of doing this thing, whatever it is that triggers that fear in you. And of course, that could simply mean avoiding new things. If you don't embrace new ideas often, so you don't challenge the way that you see the world and the way that you think, if you don't go to new places very often, if you don't try new hobbies or groups or classes very often, if you avoid meeting new people or being within a big social group, these can all be you overinflating the idea of a risk in your life and finding things more frightening than they actually are. And as I say, that can all be evidence of an inner child in charge and miscalculating, misjudging what's actually happening and what the risk is like for you. So number 2, emotional overwhelm. If you find that you are often paralyzed by your feelings, then it could be that your inner child is too in the fore, is trying to make too many decisions. As a general rule, children are often overwhelmed by feeling because for a lot of infancy and a lot of early childhood, we are more feeling far more than we are thinking. We are feeling what it's like to be in a family experience. We are feeling what it's like to go out on an adventure. We are feeling what it's like to succeed or to fail. We are feeling what it's like to have different types of relationships with our parents or caregivers or our friends. We feel a lot as kids. When you move into an adult experience, you continue to feel a lot, but as a general rule, if you find yourself being overwhelmed by emotion a lot, then that can be evidence that you're slipping back into a child mentality. You're going back to that early life experience where you just felt a lot and you didn't feel very secure in yourself. You sort of relied on external agents like your parents or your caregivers in order to make everything feel safe. So without them, without an adult or a guide helping you, emotions can simply be paralyzing and overwhelming. Now, there are plenty of examples of times as an adult when we are overwhelmed by emotion for perfectly good reasons. There can be a sudden experience which is just very impactful. It's very frightening. It's very exciting. It makes you furious. Briefly, momentarily, you are just that feeling. You are just overwhelmed by it. But it quickly flows on, and that should only happen occasionally. Also, it could be re-triggering of trauma that you've been holding for a while. That can be everything from very minor things, like there was a shocking experience that happened to you in a particular place, and when you go to that place, you were at risk of being re-triggered, right through to the re-triggering of abuse and horrible, horrible things happening in your early life. So if you are re-triggered into trauma, then that's not really part of this. I'm talking particularly about just part of your day-to-day experience. You're going through life, but you find that throughout the day you are often overwhelmed by an emotion. That is evidence, usually, of an inner child being too in the fore, you slipping into a child mentality and not being in your adult parent identity. Some examples of this are, I'm far too in love to think right now, I am paralyzed by fear, or this anger is, I can't handle it, this anger is too big for me to handle. If you find yourself thinking or saying or imagining things like that on a regular basis, then I would urge you to inquire as to what is the role of the inner child in your life right now, and do you need to do some self-parenting to regain control as an adult in the parent role. Number 3, confusing your friends or your partner. If you are quite inconsistent in your life, if you say one thing one day but you say something completely different the next day, or if you seem to have highs and lows an awful lot and so the way that you come across changes often, or if you simply seem to lurch from one state to another, so again, you're just not consistent with people, that can be really confusing for them and it can paralyze or even sabotage really important relationships in our lives. There can be people who matter a lot to us, but because we just keep showing up differently, and sometimes we notice ourselves doing it, and it's really frustrating and irritating, and yet that is how we feel. We're doing our best in any given situation, but it just seems like yesterday I felt this, and I completely believed that because I felt it at the time, but now I feel and believe this. Various people just that is their experience of life. It might be yours. You just find that who you are isn't hugely consistent. And so you end up confusing some of the people around you, some of the people who matter most to you, because you're just not holding consistent beliefs or opinions, but more fundamentally, you just don't feel the same on any given time or certain times of the day. You don't, sometimes the day you feel like a warm, generous, kind, soft person. Other times you feel like a hard, directed, ambitious person, and it just confuses people. Again, this can be examples of your inner child at work. They are doing their best with their limited capacities and their limited understanding of the world and their huge emotional vulnerability to manage this experience that you're having, but they're not doing it well because they're a child and they're not supposed to be doing it well. So if you find yourself slipping into a child mentality, you may well find yourself being really quite inconsistent in the way that you appear and feel to other people, and therefore your relationships will suffer. And some examples of this are that you just seem to change a lot, you're not very consistent, people would give you the feedback that you just seem to be quite a different person from time to time. Or it could be that the things you say and the things that you try and achieve and the ways in which you show up for people are conflicting, confusing, they change regularly. If any of that is true, it may be that you need to do some work to develop a better relationship with your inner child. That brings us on to number 4, which is that you change direction in your life a lot. It could be that you really find yourself wanting this thing and you can't stop thinking about it. All you really want in life is a really great friend group, and you are going to put all your energy into that. But you find a little while later that actually your career needed some work, and that's where you want to put all your energy. So if over a period of time, whether it's weeks or months, you find yourself significantly shifting from one major goal or one priority to another, that again can be your inner child simply mismanaging your life. Equally within this, if you have lofty goals, if you really want to launch that amazing business, or if you really want to find a partner who's going to really bring you to life and it's going to feel like an amazing relationship, and yet you don't do anything about it, so your day-to-day life doesn't change, you don't take risks, you're not going to new places, you're not expanding, you're not growing, you're not moving towards that goal, but you have a goal at the back of your head, which is, I'm definitely going to do this, and yet there's no evidence that you're working towards it. That again can be that inconsistency and your inner child simply not having the capacities or the skills in order to manage your adult life, and therefore they don't know how to move you towards the place you want to get to. So if you find yourself changing direction a lot, having really high priorities that seem to shift often, or not being able to marry up the things that you want out of life with the actual actions, the steps that you take, that can all be evidence of your inner child too much in the driver's seat, too much surging to the fore, yourself slipping into a child mentality on a regular basis. And then the 5th thing, this is kind of the most fundamental one, and it really sums up everything I've been talking about, but also just to bring it more into clarity, it can be that your childhood experience is being recreated in your adult life. That's effectively what happens when our child is allowed to run our lives. We recreate whatever it was that was happening, our situation that we were living when we were young. So our relationship with our partner, our intimate romantic relationship, can effectively be a recreation of our relationship with our primary caregiver, with our primary parent. You end up relying on them in the way that you did. You end up hoping that they will show you love in the way that you used to receive it. Communication isn't very good because you didn't need to communicate. They just looked after you and you received their care. This is actually a really common thing. An awful lot of relationships are based on a child-parent relationship. It's really dysfunctional, it's not great, and it doesn't get needs met, but an awful lot of people find themselves living relationships like that. But outside of your relationship, you may just find that things from your childhood, feelings or experiences or events, just keep being repeated. They keep showing up in your life. You go to work and you know that there's a particular person in the office who makes you feel a certain thing. They make you feel small or insecure or unable to cope. Or they make you feel amazing and they shower you with praise and you feel fantastic, but it's very shallow and a very fragile feeling. So if they go away or if they change their opinion or if you go home at the end of the day, sometimes you can lose that feeling. That can be examples of us recreating our childhood experience in our adult lives. The inner child is quite primitive. They are recreating the experience they were having when they were little. So Whatever you were living when you were small, whether you felt really held and loved and protected, but maybe smothered within that, not necessarily, but some people who feel very loved as a child also feel coddled and kept away from risk, and so they become shy of risk. Or whether you felt quite perilous, like it wasn't a safe experience as you were growing up. There was anger around, or there was an inconsistent parent, or something was happening that meant you didn't really feel safe as a child. Those are some examples of what we can recreate in our adult lives if we're not really in our adult mentality and fully mature emotionally. We can just end up bringing all that stuff into the present. It's all unconscious. We don't intentionally recreate this stuff, but you'll just find yourself moving into situations. Let's say you have a situation where you're in a job and you're being bullied, and something about that situation feels like it did when you were little. So you leave and you go and get another job and it happens again. It could be that you're showing up with the same stuff is being triggered. We unconsciously send signals to the people around us, and if somebody else has the same kind of trigger that we have, they fulfill the other half of a dynamic, then someone will step into that role and recreate that situation for us. Or we just consistently keep making choices that mean we end up in the same place, or we just feel the same way and so we're drawn to the same situations and we end up doing the same thing over and over again. These are all examples of a child experience just showing up in an adult world and sabotaging the experience that you're having. Okay, so those are all examples of ways in which a child mentality or a child experience can show up in your adult world. Often, unless we've done a lot of personal work, we are regularly being triggered back into a child state without knowing that's what's happening. So if anything I've said in this video feels familiar, or you're like, yeah, actually I know that experience, that keeps happening to me, it could be there's a really exciting opportunity for you here of engaging with personal growth work and moving yourself fully into your adult state. So how do we do that? Well, I think last time I mentioned a book called Self-Parenting by John Pollard. It's a wonderful little resource, quite a lot of it's cartoons, and it's just designed to help you begin having a dialogue with your inner child. So being able to distinguish your adult, your parenting voice from the voice of your inner child, understand what each half wants, what their motivations are. But the sort of byproduct of that, the bit that I'm really interested in, is strengthening the boundary between these two aspects of you. We need to make sure that you are in your adult self as often as possible, that you're very conscious when you are triggered into your child, so that you're able to take the necessary steps of reassuring them, making sure they feel safe, assuming control again in a given moment, and then making the best choices you can as a conscious adult while keeping your inner child safe. This work has a huge number of applications. It can help all those situations that I've talked about in this video. All of them can be enhanced and often completely overcome by developing this relationship with inner child, understanding what each aspect of you wants and what the priorities are, and then making sure you can assume conscious, active control in your life as a conscious adult, being the ideal parent for your inner child. It's amazing work. It really does change lives. So if anything in this video feels familiar, or if you're curious about getting involved in a better relationship with your inner child and strengthening your inner adult, then I really recommend that you pick up a copy of that book and begin working with that relationship. Okay, that's it. That's the end of my video for today. I'm sure I'll be back with some more stuff about adulting soon. It is one of the most exciting topics in the world for me. But until I'm back, then thank you very much for joining me. Please make sure you've given this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And leave me a comment if anything in here is of interest to you, or if you'd like to steer where this series goes next. What else would you like me to talk about parenting, inner parenting, adulting, how to be an adult, any of that stuff. Please let me know what you'd like to hear and I'll make a video about it. Okay, until next time, take care and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.